Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing my mock draft 3.0. This will be week of the NFL draft. It is now Monday, actually Tuesday morning, before the Thursday NFL draft. So I'm going to be doing this mock draft today, which is what I think should happen. And then, so let's be very clear, what I think should happen. And then Wednesday night, I will be posting a predictive mock draft on what I think will happen. So two very, very different things. Just want to make that clear before I get comments that are like, no way that's going to happen. Because yeah, it probably won't, but it's what I think should happen. So let's get straight into this. And I will find a little bit of middle ground. I'm not going to be super severe with like being very high or very low on certain players where I'm just going to drop them all the way down the board to where I actually have them graded. But we're going to get straight into this. I think Caleb Williams is the first overall pick. That is pretty easy layup there. And then we're here at number 2. I also think this is a pretty easy pick, and I think it's Drake May for the Commanders here. I don't think it's Jayden Daniels. I don't think that he should be that pick there. That is my opinion with their O-line, just a ton of different factors when it comes to Jayden Daniels, just not having the tools that you look for a projectable franchise quarterback that Drake May does have. So I'm picking Drake May there at number 2. By the way, this is also a 2-round mock draft, I forgot to state. Pick number 3, the New England Patriots. Now, what do I think should happen here? I think the Patriots have a lot to do, but also a long ways to go to be a competitive team. So what I think should happen here is a trade. Now we get into scenarios. I haven't really predetermined necessarily a trade here, but the most kind of obvious thing that would come to mind would be the Vikings here, and they clearly staged themselves with pick 11 and 23 to trade up. Now that's not going to be enough, so we're going to have to do a first next year. And when I do trades on my mock drafts, I'm not really too worried about getting the compensation perfectly. Obviously, if we're including the picks that are in this mock draft, it's going to be sort of important, but for next year's picks and stuff like that, I'm not too worried about the compensation there. So we're going to end up doing pick 11, 23, and then a first from next year. That's what we're going to end up doing here. Man, it's kind of crazy they don't have any other picks outside of this. They would only have 3, and then it would go to 108. So that's really interesting to me. But we're going to go ahead and force this trade. I do think the Patriots should trade back in this draft if Drake May is off the board at pick number 3. So I'm forcing this trade through. And the Minnesota Vikings here, should they take Jayden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy? In my opinion, they should take J.J. McCarthy, and that's what I'm going to do here. So we have 3 quarterbacks off the board in a row to start this mock draft. And that leaves us at pick number 4 here. So now here are the Cardinals. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting for me. Because yes, in my opinion, this could just click on to Marvin Harrison. That would be my pick if they're staying here. Now, could they be fielding calls for someone trading up to get Daniels at 4 now? As we could see a run of the quarterbacks go early. Like, let's say the Giants, for example. Could they be getting a call from the Giants here saying, hey, we want to get Daniels, so then they would trade back to 6. But so it depends on where they have these receivers graded. In my opinion, what should happen here with that, ideally this is a draft night kind of deal where the Cardinals GM, who was very active last year, traded back and then traded back up to 6 to get Paris Johnson. Traded with the Lions to 12, then back up to 6 to get his tackle of the future from Ohio State. In this scenario, I'm not sure that they're going to be necessarily able to work out the exact compensation that they want there at that pick number 4. So I think I'm going to go ahead and select Marvin Harrison Jr. here and give them their franchise wide receiver. They really have nothing going at that position and desperately need a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 as well, but they have Michael Wilson. That's about all they got going there. Stanford legend, by the way. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is the pick at number 4. That leads us to number 5 here, which is the Chargers. And there's a lot of trade-out positions here. And in this situation, there would be so many teams ringing their phone. And I know that they want to trade back. They also need a wide receiver. But they also have Greg Roman as their offensive coordinator. And if you know anything about the Ravens offense with Greg Roman, he didn't really care about using wide receivers. He cared about tight ends and running the football 45 times a game, which is something that Michigan and Jim Harbaugh also did. So it's a great fit there. But we have this pick is a book for me to be traded back. Now, who's going to be trading up for Jayden Daniels? Now, is that the Giants at pick 6? Is that possibly, in this situation, a Broncos or a Raiders? I mean, it really could be the Patriots. I just don't think that that's... Actually, with the compensation that they just received, the Patriots could be calling here to move back up and come get Jayden Daniels here if they really liked him that much. But I think a team like the Giants, they would be looking, though... Yeah, this is interesting. I'm kind of working this out as we go here. But I'm going to have in this situation... Ooh, it can't be the Broncos or the Raiders because they're all in the same division. Interesting. There's a little AFC West stuff there. Would they be willing to trade a quarterback to a division rival? I think not. So what I'm going to have happening here is I'm going to have the Patriots trading back up with the Chargers. Now they have pick 11, 23, 34, 68. So they're going up from 11 to 5. This is kind of like what the Cardinals did last year with going down to 12 and then back up to 6 from pick 3. So this is kind of reminiscent of that. But I'm going to have the New England Patriots trading their pick 11, their pick 23 as well, I guess. Yeah, it would be 23 as well. And we'll throw a next year second in there for this pick 5 here from the Chargers. So now the Chargers just got compensated. But so the Patriots gained a first for next year. The compensation, this is why I don't look too much at the compensation in these, because I'm going to have it all messed up. In this case scenario, the Patriots would gain a ton of compensation, give less than what they got back, probably net a first and a second to move back 2 spots. So you're perfectly good with that for the most part. And since Jayden Daniels slid here, by slid only a couple of spots, they're going to go ahead and get Jayden Daniels at 5. So I think this would be a great move. Obviously, this stuff is all so dependent on draft night and how everything goes. But we're now through 5 picks, and this is going to take a little bit longer than usual just because so many moves. But we're going to get into a little bit more of a flow here on what I think should happen. Now, pick 6, I still think the Giants are going to have to sit with Daniel Jones. I could definitely see them picking a quarterback. But in this scenario, I'm going to just stick with this scenario, which is a little bit unorthodox. But we are going to have the Giants here picking Malik Nabers at pick 6, which gives them a true wide receiver 1. He's versatile, can be in the slot and at the X. People have him as graded as the best player in the class. I think he's up there. He truly is elite. We saw a lot of slot fades. We saw his ability to run after the catch, which kind of separates him from the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and the Rome Odunzes of the world. So I think the Giants would love a guy like Malik Nabers there at pick 6. At pick 7, this is my favorite lock pick that I think both the Titans and I would love a ton just because it makes so much sense. And that's them getting Joe Alt at 7, which is just absolutely great value. I mean, this guy, if it wasn't such a quarterback and wide receiver heavy class with a lot of teams that need both of those positions, Joe Alt could be easily a top 3 lock in every other draft cycle, potentially even higher than that. He is that good. Pick 8, we have the Falcons on the board, and this is also a pick I really like. We're going to start getting into a little bit more of a flow here because I think that Dallas Turner is the perfect fit for this Raheem Morris coached Falcons team that really just likes this archetype of player. So I think Dallas Turner really just matches the mold that they like here in Atlanta with this new regime. And I think that pass rush has to be the way they go here, which is kind of interesting because now we're at pick 9 and Rome Odunze is still here, which is something that's not necessarily expected. And we could really see a move again here. I don't know if Chicago would go ahead and spend capital on an Odunze, but what I do know is that the Bears have 4 picks in this draft, I believe. Yes, they have 4 picks in this draft total. One is the first overall. So after the first overall pick, they only have 3 more picks in this draft. And I think there's still a lot of work to be done on the Bears roster. So I'm going to have them trading back this pick. It could be a lot of teams, but in this scenario, when we have the Chargers, they don't have wide receivers because Keenan Allen's gone and Mike Williams is gone. Mike Williams is a Jet, Keenan Allen's a Bear. I'm going to have the Chargers also trading back up. That pick 11 for that pick 9, and we're going to add in pick 69 here. And we'll also throw 110. There we go. And we're going to force that. And we have now the Chargers are back up on the board, and they get Rome Odunze here at pick 9. So they do get one of those top receivers because these quarterbacks ran, and then Joe Alt for sure, and then Dallas Turner went. And there they go. They get Odunze, which is great value at pick 9 there, I believe. Then we come to pick 10 here, which is the New York Jets. And the New York Jets are now in a spot with Mike Williams and Garrett Wilson as their 2 receivers, where they're pretty settled at that position. And then at tackle, they went and got Tyron Smith. So big filler there. Now, would they be kind of like an Eagles team where they're going to pick a tackle for the future? There's plenty elite tackles here. I mean, what a tackle class. Do they do that, or are they looking right now? We have Aaron Rodgers probably for another year, maybe 2, and we go get a weapon for him. Is that going to be their strategy here? In my opinion, this is what I would do. So what I would do is try to squeeze whatever I could out of this Aaron Rodgers window. I think that's probably the best strategy for them in this situation, and I think that's Brock Bowers, adding an elite tight end who's basically another receiver. You got Garrett Wilson, who's just so dynamic in so many ways, kind of smaller when it comes to, I believe he's 5'10", 5'11", and then you got a Mike Williams who's a much bigger, a 6'4", go get the ball kind of guy. So you got 2 different really good archetypes that pair, and then you got Brock Bowers kind of in the slot. That could be absolutely disgusting. That could give Aaron Rodgers, now that he has much more time, that could give him so many weapons. Now we have the Bears here. They traded that 9 pick back to gain some picks down the board. Now they have 11, 69, 75, 110, and 122. So now the Bears are here at 11, only move back 2 spots from that pick. And I'm going to have them taking an edge rusher here. Now, whether that's Latu or Jared Verse is probably, that's the only debate here. I'm going to have Jared Verse going at pick 11 to them. Latu, elite edge rusher, really just a hand fighter, is so technique savvy. He does have medicals. They're going to possibly push him down the board just a bit, though, and I believe that would be the Jared Verse pick here. That would be the reasoning that he would go over Latu in this situation. Also, Jared Verse is just a beast. Such a speed to power guy. I've watched sacks where the O-lineman's been pushed back into the quarterback. So Jared Verse is awesome, and I think they go with him there. Pick 12 now. Now, the next 2 picks, the Broncos and the Raiders, very interesting to me because these 2 teams totally need a quarterback. The Broncos, as of today, just traded for Zach Wilson for, I believe, a 6th and a 7th got swapped with Zach Wilson in that. And that's not their quarterback of the future, in my opinion. Jared Stidham is the only other rostered quarterback for Denver right now, as Russell Wilson has departed. So we have a tier of quarterbacks that falls next, and that's the Bo Nix, Michael Penixes of the world. That doesn't make any sense because there's 2 of them. But Bo Nix and Michael Penix is that next tier, and we have these 2 teams here that are also very needy for a quarterback. So it's really interesting. Where do they go with this? The Raiders are rolling out Aiden O'Connell. It's like, where do you go with this? Because I don't feel that these guys are going this early, Bo Nix and Michael Penix. Maybe one of them could be reached on, but I truly don't see either of these guys with their age, and then Penix with his injury history. I don't see these guys going at this point. So that begs the question, what goes on here? Now, is it a trade back? Is it they pick one of these guys and then hope that one of their later picks, the next pick up would be the Raiders at 44? Do they hope their quarterback's there, or maybe they trade up in the 2nd round? We'll get to that, and I'm kind of having to work through that right now as we're going through this. And I think that teams will be wanting to trade up here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I think I'm going to have a team trading up here, I'm going to have the Broncos trading back with the Jacksonville Jaguars here. I truly think that the Jaguars do need another corner pretty badly, honestly. So I'm going to have the Jaguars moving up to 12 from 17, and they're going to give up probably a second next year, maybe that pick 48 as well, and then we'll go with New Orleans' pick from 116. We're going to force this trade through. Have the Jaguars here going with Quinion Mitchell, who I think fits them really well. Quinion Mitchell, Toledo corner in the MAC. Don't let that discount his talent. He is amazing. He truly is. At the Senior Bowl, he was such a huge standout guy, and people really got to see what he was about. Also, if you watch his film, just so elite, and he was really able to stay on receivers, really in those one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, which is always super impressive because those are so slighted towards receivers with the open field and just the technique of a one-on-one in those scenarios. So I like Quinion Mitchell for the Jaguars there. And then pick 13, we have the Raiders here. And the Raiders really need a tackle on the other side of Kolton Miller. And I think that's going to be Talisa Fuaga here from Oregon State. I think that solidifies their two tackles. That would give them a really solid tackle duo there. And they made some splash plays in free agency, like adding Christian Wilkins. That way now their pass rushes Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins there. So I think that solidifying this O-line really just gives them a foundation for their future with whatever they're going to do at quarterback. And I think Fuaga is a absolutely amazing tackle to put next to Kolton Miller there. Now, at pick 14, I'm going to stay with the same theme here when it comes to tackle. And I'm going to lean with Olu Fashanu here out of Penn State, who last year was a projected top 10 pick, decided to go back to school, struggled a little bit against especially Ohio State, but is still a premier player, and I wouldn't let his subtle struggles against some of these guys and some of these really good teams such as Ohio State and JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, those edge rushers, I wouldn't let those sway too much, even though those things did happen. Now, pick 15 here, we have the Indianapolis Colts on the board, and it's pretty clearly, at least to me, a corner here, and it's an athlete as well. And I think Terrion Arnold really fits their bill of what they like with the size, speed, and just dynamic athlete here out of Alabama. He really gives that corner room what they look for there. Over in Indy, I'm now on to pick 16 with the Seattle Seahawks. And with pick 16, I'm going to have the Seahawks picking Troy Fautanu here. Fautanu, I believe is how you say it. Let's go back. Fautanu. And he initially profiled more as a guard because there were some concerns with his arm length, which is usually what would slide a college tackle to guard. It's because they would have shorter arms and not really be able to extend against these longer edge rushers. But he actually, when he measured in with much longer arms than people expected, which kind of swung him back to maybe a tackle, or at least a versatile guy that can probably do both, or whatever you need out of him. Pick 17, the Broncos are now here after the trade that I made with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, man, this could be a spot if they were wanting to pick one of these quarterbacks now, where it's like, okay, this isn't too crazy, depending on where your grade is for like a Bo Nix. Penix could be held down because of his injury history. And yeah, I mean, this is really an opinionated thing, and I don't have too much of an opinion when it comes prospect-wise. I don't think Bo Nix is necessarily a first-round grade guy at all, and I also don't know if Penix really is. I could see possibly a very back-end first kind of grade on Penix, more of a second to third guy, at least in my mind. So the question is, where do you go from here? I think edge rusher isn't a bad idea. I also think corner. I don't know what the future of Pat Surtain is over here in Denver. I could see a replacement pick here for Pat Surtain, honestly. I also know that the corner class here definitely is pretty solid up here at the top, and I know that Nate Wiggins and Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cooper DeJean is an amazing athlete here. And if I'm Denver here, I think I'm going to take Cooper DeJean. I think that he's really versatile. He can slide to safety. He can do a lot for your secondary and really set up that secondary for the future, which continually needs help. I know their defense really ramped it up back half of the year last year, but they also got 70 points hung on them, and a lot of that was due to bad secondary play, along with other factors. Now we're on to pick 18 with the Cincinnati Bengals here, and I really like Byron Murphy and Johnny Newton here. Jerzon Newton goes by also Johnny Newton, and I like a interior defensive lineman here. I know, but now it's just Sheldon Rankins and B.J. Hill in Cincinnati. So I'm going to end up going with, honestly, for more of the archetype for what Cincinnati's looking for, I'm going to go Jerzon Newton here, even though I think Byron Murphy may be sliding here much more than he should. Pick 19, I love Laiatu Latu's fit with the Rams here. UCLA, he gets to stay out west, and I think they're really looking for that edge rusher. They have a very, very young team, and they have a very their defense doesn't have many names on it, so Latu gives them a big name. They can take the risk with the medicals. I really think that Latu's a great pick here. Now the Steelers are on the clock at pick 20. This is tough. It almost feels like a trade out spot. It's either a tackle or a trade out spot here. With the Steelers pick here, I'm going to end up J.C. Latham and Amarius Mims are both right tackles, which would allow Broderick Jones to slide back to left tackle, which is his natural position. And I think I'm going to end up going with J.C. Latham, who's the more proven tackle here, even though pairing up Amarius Mims with Broderick Jones, former Georgia player as well, would be a really cool thing. Amarius Mims just hasn't played that much football, though. He started for 1 year and didn't even play the full year. So there's still a lot of development to be done there. I think J.C. Latham's just the more solid pick to shore up this Steelers offensive line here. Now, pick 21, the Miami Dolphins are on the clock. And now, with losing Christian Wilkins, Byron Murphy definitely is an option here. So is an interior offensive line kind of player. A Graham Barton who can possibly maybe slide. He'll be more of a guard, but played tackle at Duke. Jackson Powers Johnson also still here. What do I want to do here with the Dolphins pick? I think this is going to end up being Graham Barton, who is versatile. They really need that versatility on that offensive line with some aging players like Teron Armstead. I think that this is a smart pick here to get someone versatile that can do it all here in Miami. Pick 22 is the Eagles. I'm going to have the Eagles going with Amarius Mims, and they'll have the opportunity to develop him a bit and really give him that playing time. I mean, we know the Eagles' offensive line coaches and their development there is so elite. So this is probably one of the best places he could land in this situation. We're at pick 23 now with the Chargers having traded back. They ended up taking Rome Odunze at 9 with a trade back up. And then they also have that pick 23 in this scenario. Like I said earlier, there's many things for them to improve at. I think D tackle is definitely one of those. I think corner is also one of those things that they could definitely improve at here. Now, Sainristil still, I think, should definitely be a Charger at some point. Pick 23 in the draft, excessive. But I think that I'm going to end up taking Byron Murphy here to the Chargers, giving them some pass rush on the defensive interior. I think that's very smart for building this defense back up with some aging players on it. Pick 24 now, the Dallas Cowboys are on the clock. A.D. Mitchell out of Texas would be a really fun fit. What should they do here? They still need some corner help for sure. They also could use another wide receiver along with C.D. Lamb here. I know Brandon Cooks has been an acquisition, but he hasn't been necessarily the guy that's going to take on a full wide receiver 2 responsibility, especially when it comes to health and things like that with being older in his career. I think that C.D. Lamb's kind of been on mostly an island there, even though Cooks has contributed in his ways. A.D. Mitchell gets a lot of C.D. Lamb comparisons as well, which would be a super interesting situation. I also think that this team definitely now could use offensive tackle, and I think they could probably use it more. So I'm going to have them reaching maybe a little bit on a guy, Tyler Guyton here. I think they like very much. I think that Guyton could step in there. Tyron Smith did depart, which was a big deal. He had been locked down for so long. But I'm going to have Tyler Guyton here, Oklahoma tackle. There's a pretty good history there with some Oklahoma linemen. Lane Johnson here, they've really struggled on the offensive line a bit. And I think, honestly, one of the best picks for them right here could be Jackson Powers Johnson. He does have guard versatility as well, and it will allow them to kind of shuffle their O-line with Zach Tom and Josh Myers. So I'm going to go Jackson Powers Johnson to the Green Bay Packers here. Pick 26, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this one could definitely be, they retained Mike Evans, obviously Chris Godwin's still there. They still have some wide receivers, maybe not a first-round wide receiver this year. They could use some offensive line help still. But I think more than that, corner is something I'm still looking at. And a Nate Wiggins really is intriguing here. I think this is a really good player. If he's here at 26, I think you got to take him. So I'm going to go Nate Wiggins here to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, pick 27 is the Arizona Cardinals here. And earlier on, we had them taking Marvin Harrison Jr., which is a great start to this draft for them. Now, at pick 27, I think we're looking at defense. They still have a lot of progress to be made. Edge rusher, it kind of thins out here. It's who you're liking at the back end of this edge rusher kind of tier. You got the two Penn State guys. You got the Senior Bowl guys, Marshawn Kneeland, Darius Robinson. Even Braswell's stock has been sort of higher than it was in the season for sure in the postseason process here. Chop Robinson's probably the most traits guy here. But a Marshawn Kneeland or a Darius Robinson's definitely in play. I'm going to end up going Chop Robinson here, though. He is so quick around the edge. I mean, flash the hands and go. His bend is absolutely insane. I think that's a lot of traits that they're going to like Jonathan Gannon over there, being a defensive-minded head coach in Arizona. Pick 28 here is the Buffalo Bills, and to me, this is a wide receiver all the way. And when we look at wide receivers here, we're seeing an Adonai Mitchell, who's a great combination of just technique and route running, also some speed there. Adonai Mitchell, he came over obviously from Georgia and couldn't really stay healthy, and he's also had some things pop up here at the back end of the process. But I think Adonai Mitchell was the most complete receiver here. Then you have a Brian Thomas Jr., who is much more of a absolute speed beast, also very tall, big frame here. More traits. Then you have a Keon Coleman, who's a jump ball guy. Lad McConkey, straight, route running, but can also have some really sneaky vertical speed there. Roman Wilson, Troy Franklin, who I'm not as high on. But here, I'm going to have the Bills picking Brian Thomas Jr. I believe his traits will be sought after very highly as a wide receiver one, especially with his size and his speed combination here. And I think the Bills would love him to fall. This is a big-time fall here for Brian Thomas. I think he could easily be a top 20 pick here. But again, I'm kind of just going through this with fits that I like. They may not necessarily be in the exact spot that I like, but more of a team fit kind of deal. Pick 29 here, we have the Detroit Lions. And they could definitely look interior offensive line here. A Christian Haynes, this would be a little bit early for him, but he really, really showed out. I liked him a ton. But more than that, I think edge rushers are still here, this little tier of guys, and I really think that they could like a Marshawn Kneeland, they could like a Darius Robinson here. I'm not sure as much about an Adisa Isaac or a Jonah Ellis or Chris Braswell here. I'm going to end up going with Darius Robinson here to the Detroit Lions, who do need an edge rusher on the other side. Pick 30, I got the Ravens on the clock, and for me, it's definitely a tackle here. And Jordan Morgan, honestly, being here would be the next up in this kind of tier of tackles. So I'm going to have them taking Jordan Morgan here out of Arizona, also a Senior Bowl guy. Pick 31, we have the San Francisco 49ers here. They're also going to be looking offensive line. And whether or not that's a Kingsley Suamataia or a Kieran Amagaji, one of these kind of guys, or an interior guy, which they also need help on for sure. Zach Frazier, if you wanted to slide the guard, maybe great center. I think he could be a really early second rounder, potentially one of these last picks here. Could also use some help on the defensive interior. You got a Braden Fisk, you got a Chris Jenkins. I don't think you would go any further down than that, honestly. But it could be a guy like a Fisk here, even though they have this touted defensive line. Also corner. Corner's definitely in play here. And what I'm actually going to have happen here is I'm going to have the 49ers trade this pick with the Carolina Panthers. 33 for 31. I'm going to throw in pick 101 and 142. I'm going to force this through. I'm going to have the Panthers trading up here for a receiver I think they'll really like for Bryce Young. Now that they have Deontay Johnson in a trade with the Steelers, they're going to look for a more physical receiver, a go-getter, and that's Keon Coleman. I think, again, this could be a little bit early, but I think that the Panthers would make that trade for sure. And that's going to leave us with the Chiefs here, who I have picking Adonai Mitchell, which would be an absolute value steal here, especially going under Keon Coleman. That's not something that many people would predict going into this draft. Now, at pick 33, we have the 49ers back on the clock. And what are they going to do here? They have Debo, they have Ayuk, they have their weapons there. They could really look towards, and I keep saying it, they could look towards corner. At this point, I would have them taking Kool-Aid McKinstry here. Pick 34, I got the Patriots on the clock, and earlier I had the Patriots taking Jaden Daniels. They also have another pick. No, Jaden Daniels, and they got compensation. So they have their quarterback of the future in this scenario. Now, did they go pick a wide receiver that they desperately need? I'm going to say possibly. Offensive tackle, also a huge need for this Patriots team. And I'm going to say that they go ahead and take Kingsley Suamataia from BYU here to really help fill in that tackle spot that they need so badly. And especially if they're picking a quarterback, they will need to protect Jaden Daniels, especially with his smaller frame. So pick 35, now we have the Cardinals on the board. And earlier with the Cardinals, we have them picking Marvin Harrison Jr. and Chop Robinson. So we have an edge rusher and a wide receiver here that we have selected so far for the Cardinals. They still have many different ways they can go. I think offensive line is something they will continue to look to improve. I think you could definitely see possibly a defensive interior kind of guy also go here. We got an edge rusher in there. I think Chris Jenkins would be a pick here. I don't think Fisk really fits what they want as much. So I'm going to go ahead and go Chris Jenkins here at pick 35. Now we have the Commanders at pick 36. And so far we've had them pick Drake May. So their quarterback of the future. I think offensive line is the next thing I'm looking at immediately. This tier of tackles is tough, but the one I like the most, Senior Bowl guy I got to talk to actually, was awesome guy. I love Patrick Paul so much. I'm going to have him going to the Commanders here at pick 36 out of Houston. His brother Chris Paul, by the way, is in the NFL as well. Pick 37, the Chargers are on the clock. With the Chargers, I picked Rome Odunze, also selected Byron Murphy II. So we have a D interior and a wide receiver here. Still plenty to be done with this defense here for the Chargers. And I think as well, wow, tight end's also very interesting here. Knowing that Greg Roman is their offensive coordinator, Jatavion Sanders would be very interesting over in LA there. Wide receiver, they could also double dip. That would be a thing where they could definitely do. But I'm going to have, this could be early, but I'm going to have their guy, Blake Corum, go here. Michigan guy, you know what, Harbaugh, and then think of him. They could really trade down and take him here, but I'm going to have him going here at pick 37, which is very high, and it's before I think any running back will go, but I'm going to have that being the case in this mock draft. Pick 38, we had the Titans picking a offensive tackle, Joe Alt, earlier. I think they really, I know they added Calvin Ridley and L'Jarius Sneed, but I'm going to have them also picking another wide receiver. And I think that wide receiver, we have the Xavier Worthy down here. They have the Calvin Ridley type. I don't really think that they would pick the next one off of what they already have, if that makes any sense. They have so much work to do in that room. But I'm going to have the Titans ending up taking a Xavier Legette here, who I think there's so many traits to like about him. There's also so many things to work on, and this is definitely a pick that wide receivers are so nuanced through that kind of like wide receiver 8 to wide receiver like 20-something. It's very opinionated. A lot of them tested very well, but I think Xavier Legette could definitely be a great addition to this Titans offense. Pick 39, I have the Panthers on the board. And we just selected Keon Coleman for the Panthers. That was their first pick in this draft. Yes, it was. So now with pick 39, which they received from the Giants. I'm going to have the Panthers probably looking at a center here. We could also look, Brian Burns does need replaced. So we could also look at like a Marshawn Kneeland or a Chris Braswell. We could also look at corner here for the Panthers because they still need some help there. I think Ennis Rakestraw or TJ Tampa, maybe even Kamari Lassiter. I know he really didn't test well. But I'm going to end up going with TJ Tampa here, addressing that corner position. I know they lost Dante Jackson to the Steelers in the Deontay Johnson trade. I'm going to have TJ Tampa being selected here. Pick 39 to the Panthers here, addressing that corner room a bit because they definitely need it. Now the Commanders are back on the clock here. And last time we picked Patrick Paul, and then with their first, we picked Drake May. So we got offensive tackle, we got quarterback, and now I think that we could look at corner as well. And I really like Ennis Rakestraw here for the Commanders, addressing that corner room. Last year they attempted with Emmanuel Forbes. Didn't work out too hot. Hopefully he can rebound a little bit, but I'm very concerned about that pick for them and the longevity that he will bring to that team. Pick 41 with the Green Bay Packers back on the clock. I believe we addressed Jackson Powers-Johnson in the first round. They love picking defensive linemen. I would look here at potentially a Fisk. Not really the second tier here. I know Mekhi Wingo is definitely someone that people are seeing pretty highly compared to consensus there. Now, this highly? Probably not. Outside of that offensive line, I think that a pick that makes a lot of sense is Tyler Nubin from Minnesota here, who's the best safety in this class, in a very shallow safety class. It doesn't really have much else in it. I really like Cam Kinchins, and Sion Vaki, and Cole Bishop. We got a bunch of Josh Proctor, Malik Mustafa. We got a bunch of Senior Bowl guys in here. Pick 42 with the Houston Texans on the board. And I had them, obviously they traded that 23rd pick with the Vikings so that they could, hopefully stage themselves to move up. So now they're here at pick 42. They have Stephon Diggs from the Bills in a trade. They obviously acquired him along with Nico Collins, and they have their Tank Dell. Their wide receiver core is pretty filled out. I think they're probably feeling pretty good about their wide receiver core. They lost Sheldon Rankins on the interior. He went to the Bengals, I believe. So I think that they're going to continually be looking at corner, possibly. Also, just off-ball linebacker. And Peyton Wilson, Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M could stay in the state. Also, Junior Colson is someone that's in those talks for linebacker 1. But I'm going to have this ending up being Edgerrin Cooper here from Texas A&M, staying in the state, going to the Texans at pick 42. The Falcons pick here, I'm really going to be looking interior defensive line, possibly. And I still have Fisk on the board here. I think Fisk is a big fit guy. Where is he going to fit? I don't think it's with the Falcons. I think it's more of like a Lions. Pick 61 feels like a big fit for Fisk. And even though he looks like he's hanging up on the board here, I think with the Falcons, you're definitely consistently, they picked Dallas Turner first in this situation. I think they could easily double dip on that defensive line there. I also think that they could address the corner position here, whether or not that's with a slot corner like Sainristil, or whether or not that's a defensive interior guy when we're talking about bolstering this D-line. I'm going to have them going Mekhi Wingo here with a bit of a reach on this board, but I think Wingo's stock has been up a lot, and I really like what I've seen out of Wingo at LSU. Pick 44, I'm actually going to have the Raiders getting traded up with by the Detroit Lions. Exactly what I was just talking about the pick before. We're going to throw in a third from next year in 201. And I'm going to have this Lions pick being Braden Fisk here. I think he is a fit on this defense. Earlier I had the Lions picking Darius Robinson, so they're going heavy on their D-line here, which already has Aiden Hutchinson. So I think that could easily also be a guard because they definitely need that as well. But I'm going to have Fisk going to the Lions here. Pick 45 with the Saints. I think this is interesting because we could see a quarterback. We could see a quarterback come off the board here. Earlier we picked Olu Fashanu for the Saints, which I think is an amazing pick for them. Would really, really help. I think you could also look at wide receivers. And if there's a guy you really liked, I think you could also look D-line because you have Cameron Jordan, who's very old. You could look edge rusher here. That's exactly what I'm going to do, actually. I'm going to have Chris Braswell, who is Will Anderson's former teammate and Dallas Turner's current teammate from this past year, going to the Saints here. Pick 46, I have the Colts on the board. I'm going to go ahead and give them Peyton Wilson, who I believe is such a really good linebacker. This linebacker class is pretty thin. But Peyton Wilson is really awesome. So I'm going to have them taking him here at pick 46. Pick 47 now, I have the Giants. And the Giants picked Malik Neighbors with their first pick in this draft. They need O-line. The Giants need O-line. They also need safety because Xavier McKinney and Julian Love are both not on the team anymore. Julian Love obviously traded last year, but Xavier McKinney departed this year to the Packers. So they're going to need to address that safety spot. I'm going to have it being actually Jaden Hicks here out of Washington State to be that next safety that they actually really desperately need to address. And I think finally at pick 47, the value's way more lined up than it would be in another spot. Pick 48, now I have the Broncos here after their trade with Jacksonville in this scenario. And I think, as earlier I selected, who did I select? Cooper DeJean at pick 17 with the Broncos. I think that this could be a spot for a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix for the Broncos. And I'm going to have it being, I'm going to have it being Bo Nix here at pick 48 to the Broncos. I don't think it's horrible value. I think his grade is a second or third round guy, according to most evaluations and my own. And I think that Sean Payton would like Bo Nix, even though now Zach Wilson's there. Really confusing. Not sure. But I don't think it's a bad pick there at 48. Pick 49, the Bengals are on the clock. And earlier with the Bengals pick, I selected Johnny Newton, Jerzon Newton, defensive interior out of Illinois. Really wreaks havoc. His pass rush stuff is crazy. His film is absolutely insane. I remember watching him 2 years ago and was quite astounded with what I was watching. But here I'm going to have them picking Jatavion Sanders, tight end out of Texas, who is not surprisingly, but is really, really fast. I mean, just Brock Bowers is awesome, but Jatavion Sanders, really dynamic with the ball in his hands, really, really fast. I think he helps this offense a ton where, you already have the T. Higgins and the Jamar Chase, obviously, if T. Higgins does stay. But I think adding a Jatavion Sanders makes this offense even more dangerous than it already is, which is scary. Pick 50 here, the Eagles are on the clock. I'm actually going to have the Eagles go with Kamari Lassiter here to be a boundary corner. Really shore up that corner room because we saw that was their downfall this past season. That corner room is really bad. It's aging, and they need to address it ASAP. And Kamari Lassiter can really step in. He's played a lot of winning football, and he's looked really good in the he's played a lot of winning football. He has had his problems with the pre-draft process when it comes to testing. But that brings us to another Pennsylvania team. Actually traded Kenny Pickett to the team before, which is the Eagles. And I'm going to have the Steelers picking Zach Frazier here, falling right into the lap of the Steelers. And they need the center very, very desperately. Earlier I had the Steelers picking J.C. Latham. So now we're ensuring the whole O-line is good. Pick 52 now. Earlier I had the Rams going with Laiatu Latu. And at pick 52, honestly, we could see a quarterback here. And I'm going to have the Rams picking Kieran Amagaji here, who's a left tackle, which they desperately need. That's going to address that hole in their roster there. Pick 53, the Eagles are on the board. And obviously just had Kamari Lassiter going to them. Also earlier had, I believe, Amarius Mims going to them. So we have tackle and we have corner. I'm going to look at linebacker. Junior Colson really is intriguing me here, and that's going to be my pick for them. I'm going to have them taking Junior Colson as an off-ball linebacker here for the Eagles. I think that'd be an amazing step-in guy. Their defense was clearly their downfall last year. Obviously, their offense wasn't ideal, but a lot of it just fell on the defense, especially in that Buccaneers game that they lost first round in the playoffs. Now the Browns are here with their first pick of the draft. They just acquired Jerry Jeudy, so I'm thinking less of wide receiver. But I am thinking of they've had a lot of moving pieces on the interior of their defensive line. I think they could look for more of a solid start there when it comes to drafting their own. But what is their type when you're looking at that? Not exactly sure. They could also look at linebacker. They have obviously a Wusu Koromoa, who's so good. But I'm going to look more towards the defensive interior here. And I'm going to have them picking, they already have Siaki Ika, which is their Tavondre Sweat comp. So I'm going to have them picking, Mason Smith is a very interesting prospect here. I'm going to have them going with Brandon Dorlus here, though. They've brought in a lot of free agents on that defense, which has been awesome. I mean, that defense is absolutely insane. But at the same time, it can cause, when you're not developing guys, it can cause much less chemistry than the other way. The Dolphins are here at pick 55. And earlier, I had them selecting Graham Barton, which I believe is a great versatile pickup for them. Now, I like Jatavion Sanders to them a lot, but he is currently not here, obviously, in this situation. Theo Johnson would be my next up for them. But I am actually going to have them going wide receiver here. And I know it's crazy, but I'm going to have them at this point going with Xavier Worthy. I think it's too obvious. This is almost just a funny pick because it's the speed. But they play into it every year, so I don't think it's that crazy to make, honestly. And at this point, there's still so many great players on this board, but I think that adding a guy like that as a third guy would also be comedic and really effective for them and how they run their scheme with Mike McDaniel there. Pick 56, I have the Cowboys up, and the Cowboys previously picked Tyler Guyton, tackle out of Oklahoma here. I'm going to have them picking Jonathan Brooks, Texas running back here, because Tony Pollard's gone, Ezekiel Elliott's gone. They need a running back, and I think Jonathan Brooks, they've kind of cleared out that room to where it seems that it's almost apparent that they're going to be drafting a guy. I think Brooks could definitely be that guy. Pick 57 here. The Buccaneers on the board. I'm going to have two running backs in a row go off. I'm having this one be Trey Benson, stays in Florida, Florida State, go Noles. Buccaneer in this case. I think Benson's contact balance is absolutely crazy. The way that he'll get hit in the legs and his legs will just keep churning and he'll stay upright. And he has very sneaky home run speed that he actually got to put on display by running sub 4.4 in the 40-yard dash. I believe he ran 4.38, maybe 4.39. So Trey Benson there at pick 57. I think this is where we're going to start to see some of the running backs come off the board. Pick 58 now, we have the Packers on the board. And previously I had the Packers selecting Jackson Powers Johnson, and then also I believe they made another pick. Yes, Tyler Nubin. I actually really like this draft for the Packers in this scenario. And I'm going to have them looking at the interior offensive line here. I'm going to have Christian Haynes go to the Packers here and fill that guard spot. I think that's an amazing pick for them. I think this is a home run draft for them if it turns out this way. Pick 59, I have the Houston Texans on the board. Previously, they picked at pick 42, Edgerrin Cooper, who I think is a great fit there. I'm going to go ahead and look at wide receiver possibly for them. Not enough room. I'm going to look defensive interior for them here, possibly as well corner. I think Mike Sainers still is going to be my pick. No shot he makes it to 59 probably, so I let him slip in this too much. He could have been their earlier pick, probably flipped those two. But I think the fit is there, and he can be a commander of a defense. Man, he was just so good, always in the backfield. Great slot, nickel corner guy. Pick 59 would be an amazing value for him. I think the Chargers would love to have him, obviously, with Harbaugh being there. But I'm going to have Mike Sainers still being a Texan here and really just up this defense. He makes everyone around him better, which I think is such an underrated trait, but so important. Pick 60, I have the Bills back on the clock after selecting Brian Thomas. Keon Coleman was the Panthers. I'm definitely going to be looking at corner because Tre'Davious White is now a Ram, which I almost forget about sometimes. And for the Bills, I know they struck out on Kaiir Elam a couple years back. I also know that they could definitely use linebacker as well. Jeremiah Trotter is very interesting here. So does Cedric Gray. This will be a tough one. Their D-line is also really aging, so they could definitely use a guy here. I'm going to have that safety be Javon Bullard here. They really need to address that spot. Pick 61, I have the Raiders on the clock, and earlier with the Raiders pick, I selected Talisa Fuaga, which is a great pick for them. Now, this is a place where I think another quarterback could go. I'm going to have it being Michael Penix Jr. at pick 61, back into the second round to the Raiders, who do need a quarterback. He can come in, play for that spot. You didn't invest too much in him. Pick 61's, decently deep into the draft, and I think that in this range of middle second to early third is where he can end up going here. Now, pick 62, the Ravens are on the board, and the Ravens picked Jordan Morgan earlier with my pick, and I think they can look many different ways. I think wide receiver is definitely in play here. I'm going to have that being the case. The wide receiver I'm going to have the Ravens selecting here is going to be Jalen Polk out of Washington, who is a little bit overshadowed by Rome Odunze, but I think he's an amazing wide receiver, and I think that they need to continue to add offensive weapons here in Baltimore. They have, obviously good offense with Lamar Jackson there, but we saw whenever they deviated from their rushing plan that their passing attack was not there, and that's probably why they lost that Kansas City game this year. So I think you need to add some more other than Zay Flowers there to this wide receiver core. Pick 63, we got the 49ers back on the board after I had them picking Kool-Aid McKinstry previously. I'm going to have them looking interior offensive line here, and Cooper Beebe is going to be my pick for the 49ers here to step into that guard position, as they definitely do need to re-up there at guard. Pick 64 here, we have the Chiefs back on the board. Earlier I had them picking Adonai Mitchell at 32, which I think they would be absolutely loving life if they got Adonai Mitchell at pick 32. The Chiefs here at pick 64, they lost L'Jarius Sneed. That's a big, big loss. I'm going to have them replace one really, really good man-to-man corner with another really, really good and underrated man-to-man corner. That's going to be Renardo Green out of Florida State. Renardo Green's been, especially with the East-West Shrine Bowl, noted as one of the best man-to-man guys, and if you look at his stats, he proves that he has been one of the best man-to-man corners in this pre-draft process, and if you watch his film, I think he's so slept on, so underrated, and I can see him being in the second round for sure. So this is the first-round mock draft. The way I would pick it, obviously, I went with the way some of these positions of these guys when it comes to what spot they were picked at aren't going to be exactly like Adonai Mitchell at 32. He should definitely be higher. Same with Brian Thomas. Chop should be down the board a little bit, but I'm looking more at a positional fit with each team at the spot, not exactly what pick they're going at. But at the top, I'm definitely looking more at the pick. I think that it should go in this order, really. So that's my best attempt at that, and I will be also recording one more mock draft before the actual NFL draft, which will be predictive of what I think will actually happen, not what I think should happen. So I thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Thank you so much for watching, and have a blessed day.